everyone, and good afternoon. It's great to be here at WLPC. My name is Wes Purvis, and I want to talk about RRM. I thought that this was going to be a little bit of a contentious topic, but then I looked at how many of our customers are actually using RRM, and I realized it's not. It's something like 99.9% of our customers have RRM enabled, right? It's just a handful of customers that have turned off RRM. So I realize this is not actually a contentious topic because everybody actually uses it. So let me go a little bit through RRM, some of the different types of RRM, and then build up to how the cloud can incorporate into RRM and the benefits that a cloud-based RRM system can provide based on the breadth of data that it has. So really, there's three types of RRM out there. You kind of have a standard, standalone, where the APs are doing their own thing. They don't really coordinate with one another. And believe it or not, this isn't just like an autonomous type deployment. It also happens in controller-based deployments where you have, each access point kind of doing what it thinks is best for itself. You have other types of RRM, a more coordinated RRM, where the APs are actually, coordinating amongst each other to determine what is the best transmit power, what is the best channel for the group of APs. It may not have a broader context, but if it can hear its neighbor, it may do a pretty good job of picking channels. And then the third way is a fully coordinated, kind of a centralized RRM where you have a controller or some, maybe a cloud or something that is pulling in data from all the APs and making decisions based on a global view. So what does RRM actually do? Again, bear with me, this may be a little basic, but we're gonna build up, I promise. First is and probably the most utilized, why our customers actually use radio resource management, is to choose channels. If you have 100 AP, 1,000 AP, tens of thousand APs, you may not want to statically assign the channels. So this is the number one reason. It could be because you don't have the wherewithal to do it, or you just don't have time. Usually it's because you don't have time, and you don't want to have to react to events that may interference that may come up, rogue APs that may come up. So it's just easier to have a centralized algorithm that's handling that for you and keeping an eye on things. Second is transfer power, right? What transfer power should the access points actually use? Should they be at maximum transfer power? Should they be at minimum transfer power? And different vendors do this differently, right? Some vendors' philosophy is I'm always going to be maximum power. Some like to turn down their transfer power as well. These are kind of the two bedrock principles of RRM that's been around for the past 15 years. We've started to see the past couple of years a couple new enhancements to RRM. One is a channel bandwidth selector, right? So determining should I use a 20 megahertz bandwidth, 40 megahertz, 80 megahertz, 160, probably not in Europe, probably not in the US either, but you could get away with 40 megahertz in a lot of cases. And so the algorithm or system will determine, is 40 megahertz a viable solution for you? Secondly is DFS, right? And I think David Coleman, kind of hinted on the importance of RRM for DFS, right? We've been in a situation many years ago where the APs needed to vacate the channel as quickly as they could, and so a lot of times they would either be statically assigned, you're always going to go to this channel, say channel 36, if you detect a DFS event. And as we've seen, some falsing and sites where there are actually DFS events, this going to channel 36 is a really bad idea because it diminishes the capacity in the entire site. So then APs, started to pick random channels, and random channels works okay. It's not the greatest. It's better to have, a context of what's happening, across the network. So now we're seeing, some radio resource management algorithms will actually provide a subset of channels to the AP, so that the AP can pick, instead of picking from every channel, it can pick, from one or two or three channels. And it actually turns out to be a pretty big improvement over the static assignment or the random assignment. And the second thing that RRM can do for DFS is to determine when should you not use DFS channels. And I think these algorithms today are fairly basic. The most common one is if I detect DFS on this channel, I'm going to, next time I go on that channel, I detect it again, I'm going to double my timeout. And I'm going to keep doing that until I have a timeout of 24 hours. And eventually, if you have bad falsing, you get a blackout. You don't use DFS channels anymore. So this one is sometimes not great to turn on, but there is a lot of potential to determine when it's valid and when it is not valid to use DFS. Right? If you don't have clients if you have clients that don't support DFS, maybe you don't want to use it, and the system could learn that as well. And finally is a 2.4 cancellation type solution. Right? So this is determining when do I have too much coverage. Can I either turn off my 2.4 radios, or if my AP hardware is capable, can I turn that into a dual 5 gigahertz type situation? And many vendors have this type of solution now, and it's something that I think actually has quite a bit of value in the marketplace if it works well. And so that's kind of the output of RRM. There's other side benefits as well. The bedrock of RRM is off-channel scanning. Right? The APs go off-channel, they learn about the environment, and that type of information is really useful for a lot of other things besides RRM. Things like utilization. What's the channel utilization across my network? Do I have high utilization? Is that causing problems? It's difficult to determine that a lot of times without some type of off-channel scanning. Security, both WIDs and WIPs, as well as rogue detection, happens based on off-channel scanning. If you don't go off-channel, you're probably not going to have a robust rogue list or be able to do any sort of wireless intrusion detection or prevention type work. How about interference detection, right? A lot of times you need to go off-channel to be able to do interference detection or determine if I have persistent interferers in an environment. As well as roaming, right? So 11K, 11V, these are the types of things that if the AP, if the central system doesn't know the neighbor relationships, it can't recommend to clients, hey, these are the 5 candidate APs, in the 11K report. So how do you use RRM? You have there's a saying, think outside the box. With RRM, you want to think inside the box. If you stay within the set of rules that you define, and you should define rules, RRM will probably work okay for you. Right? So you want to constrain, especially for TX power. Right? TX power is one of those things where if you let it go unbounded, it may turn down too far, it may not turn down far enough. If you want to create separation, lower in 2.4 versus 5 gigahertz, you can do that through constraining your TX power. So it is actually a valid use case and highly recommended to constrain your radio resource management, especially TX power. So let's talk about the cloud, right? We live in a cloud world, so let's talk about the value that cloud brings to radio resource management. So what is it that cloud brings? Well, cloud is like an elephant. It never forgets. It has a large amount of storage, vast, almost endless amounts of storage, and it can consume a lot of data, and that data can be used to make better decisions. Not just a point in time, hey, this is what's happening right now, but also this is what's happening a week ago, this is what happened 3 weeks ago. A cloud can store that large amount of data and provide that historical context for RRM to make better decisions. So let me just go through some stats that I pulled from my employer Mist that I think may be interesting for you guys and certainly is useful for RRM. And so this one is the number of access points per site across the Mist universe. And a site within the Mist universe is either typically for like a retailer, it would be a location. If it's a customer, a campus customer, it might be a building within that site. And so you can see the vast majority of our APs, or vast majority of our customers have less than 200 APs per site. Actually, vast majority are probably less than 10 per site. We do scale up, 1,200, 1,000, 1,500 APs in a site, but that's kind of out of the norm. So why is this important? Well, RRM, needs to know how many APs are in a site. Right? If it's a 1 AP site, RRM probably should behave different than if it's a 500 AP site. Right? So if it's a 500 AP site and I make a channel change, I risk causing a cascade across all those APs. So I need to think about, when I make this channel change, what else am I going to impact? If it's a 1 AP site, it doesn't really matter if I change the channel. It may matter, I may want to do this at the lowest utilization because when I change the channel, I'm going to cause a disruption. Next one is neighbor RSSI. So this is the number, the RSSI of neighbors that are heard from every AP across the Mist universe. So in orange, this is how Mist APs are hearing other Mist APs within the same site. And the blue is how the Mist APs are hearing anybody else out there. Right? So you can see most commonly, between -60 and -70 is where neighbor, APs are being heard. And I think that's probably pretty good. The stronger ones are what we want to minimize. And we want to kind of shift the entire curve back that way, and we can do that through transfer power. I think this one is really kind of interesting. I was surprised to see so many strong neighbors, and it kind of shows even better in this graph. This is the total number of APs that are heard, and so again, same thing. The orange is the Mist APs that are being heard, right? So on the this. The x-axis here is number of APs heard. So this means that one AP, in this case, for this customer, a couple customers, is hearing more than 75 Mist APs, which is just crazy, right? Typically, that would be a warehouse or something where, internal antenna APs are deployed at maybe 25 feet, and they have clear line of sight to each other, so they can hear every other AP in the facility. Again, something we want to minimize. Most APs are hearing less than 25 other, probably even less than 10 other Mist APs, which is a pretty good number, especially in 5 gigahertz when we have 25 channels in the US and 16 in Europe. And then the blue is neighbor APs, right? So some customers hear nearly 200 rogue APs from the perspective of one single AP, which is just, again, a crazy number. I do not envy that person. But the shape of the graphs really kind of follow each other, which is good to see. And there's no cutoff here. This is just any AP that's heard. Question?
Yeah, breakdown based on channel also.
The question is, do I have this breakdown based on channel? I don't have it. I could get one if you want to see it. Yeah, that would actually be interesting to see. So let's talk a little bit about a short-term view versus long-term view. So the most common RRM systems out there have a short-term view. They're running every 10 minutes, every 20 minutes, or whatever you set them to. And they have that view, that point in time. So if I have a 10-minute window, I'm going to make my decisions based on that 10-minute window. And maybe I have some hysteresis to determine, if I want to move channel, then the new channel needs to be 10, 15 dB better than the old channel. That helps dampen some of the, some channel changes. So what happens, when I have at the top here, right? This is a pretty steady. It's maybe tough to see on the projector, but it's a fairly consistent orange color. On the bottom, I have this activity right here, and I don't necessarily know what that activity is, but should I deal with it? And I won't be able to, if I'm running a 10-minute RRM, I won't be able to deal with that until, that RRM cycle, right? So something happens, I keep going, I keep having my cycles, and then finally I get to the point in time where this activity is occurring. And so once it's occurring, I can determine, is it due to high channel, is it just due to high client load? Is there some sort of external source of interference that I need to deal with? And then I can make my channel change. But that channel change, this could be something that happens every day. And so either I'm going to react when I have this narrow window, I'm going to react, at that point in time. or I'm just going to ignore it, right? If the hysteresis is too high, I won't be able to change my channel, and when maybe I should. What the cloud enables is a much wider window that we're looking at for data, right? And that could be 24 hours, it could be 7 days, it could be whatever. But you have this full context that, hey, I know that this activity happens every day around 3 p.m. Students coming into a class or whatever it is. But you have this context because you're looking over a much wider window. And I think that this is really a key innovation for cloud-based RRM, is having the ability to store a larger set of data to make a better decision. And so I think that this will help with having that kind of that it gets past that short-term view, where if you have a interference like this or something that comes up, you're able to deal with that or have the context of what's happening. All right, so how about if we want to decide when should RRM run, right? How often does it need to run? Does it need to run every 10 minutes? Does it need to run twice a day? Does it need to run once a day? Can it run once a week? I don't know, and it probably varies. So just looking at some of our customers, right? Here's a high school. This is probably the pattern that most of our customers follow, where you have activity during the day, and then at night, there's no activity. Clients people have gone home. They may have left some clients on the network, but typically, you see a dip, right? So each one of these dips is probably a pretty good time to run RRM. This is the weekend. Now let's compare this to one of our warehouse customers, and this is a warehouse that has very few breaks, and these dips are not at midnight, they're not at 3 a.m., they're actually at 9 a.m. Local time, right? So they have a maintenance window from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Every day at this location, when they're changing out personnel and kind of resetting the equipment. So this is the type of thing that RRM can actually learn. So we can determine when should we run RRM? Today in the Mist world, we run our radio resource management globally at 3 a.m. Local time in that site. And is that the best decision? So that's what we're trying to figure out here. And we're actually going to come out with a kind of a sliding window of, based on the site utilization, we learn when it's the best time to run based on the usage. And then how about building a new algorithm? Again, this is something that we're actually going through right now. We're developing a new algorithm that's capable of 2.4 cancellation. And so the benefit that the cloud brings here is I can run this data offline, right? I can ingest production data, real customer networks. I don't need to set up a lab environment or run a beta code. I can just bring in this production environment. I can run this data offline, run the algorithm offline without making the change at the customer. And then once I feel comfortable enough with the algorithm, I can then approach the customer and say, hey, can we run this? And that's actually what we're doing right now. So we're with this particular customer. This question.
Have you found some sweet spot in the number of iterations it settles down after a while?
So question is, how many iterations does it take to flush out the algorithm? And so this particular one has been worked on for maybe 2 or 3 months. And I'll tell you that from the first time that we ran the algorithm to then the next week, we actually made some tweaks. This is actually running the algorithm. So there is a difference between running the real data but in a simulated fashion versus actually running to see how the system reacts. And so what we're finding is you can do a lot beforehand, but you don't really learn the actual effects until you actually run. And so we made, I think, 1 tweak so far, and maybe there'll be more. But it's being able to run, I think having that few number of changes is because we're able to run beforehand.
But in the beforehand, you run lots of iterations.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Until you get the one that you're going to come back to.
Yeah, sure. You run it until it makes sense. And it's very important to have like visualization tools like this. So this is actually a map of the site, right? And it's 2-dimensional, so there are multiple floors here. And so the The green APs are regular dual band access points, or APs that have both radios turned on, and the orange are the APs that have been disabled, or the APs that have the 2.4 radios disabled. And so here's one iteration, second iteration. It looks very similar, but we kind of got rid of this clump right here where we had 4 APs that are in pretty close proximity turned off. So this is actually running. We're running it right now at a customer and a couple customers, and it does what we think it does because we're able to run beforehand, offline. So we have APs that have turned off their 2.4 radios, so other APs that have changed their channels or changed their transfer power. This guy actually decreased his transfer power, and that's really important. The entire goal of this algorithm is to find the excess coverage without actually having to raise the transfer power of the 2.4 radios. And so it's good to validate, and this is the importance of actually running, because we can validate, hey, the APs didn't change their transfer power. We can feel pretty confident that we have pretty good coverage still. And so this site has about 230 APs. We disabled 30 radios, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it netted about a 25% capacity increase at that site in 2.4. So there is actually tangible benefit to running this type of algorithm. Alrighty, and I'm on my last slide. So this is the summary. Summary is RRM is not contentious. Everybody's using it. There's just you may think that you can come up with a better channel plan, and maybe you can. You may be able to come up with a better transfer power plan. You probably can. But do you want to have to deal with that every day? And what we're finding is our customers don't want to have to deal with that. So I feel comfortable saying RRM is not at all contentious. It's just common. It's what customers do. So RRM should be able to react to both real-time events, right? So this is if somebody turns on an interference source or a rogue neighbor comes on, AP should be able to deal with that, but also have the historical context to determine, this guy turned on an interferer at 3 p.m. or there's a large load on the network at 3 p.m. Do I actually need to do anything about that? And that's what that broad window that is, having a large amount of data that's enabled by the cloud, having this vast set of data.
Can you walk through what's the math behind, say, someone turns on a microwave oven for 2 minutes?
Yep.
How would that? That's a real world thing happens today.
Yeah. So question is, what do you do with a microwave oven? Somebody turns it on, they microwave their lunch, 2 minutes. Should you do anything with that? And for us, it comes down to frequency, like how often it's happening. So if this is something that happens, almost continuously during lunch hour, we're gonna do something about it. But if it happens, somebody is taking a break at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes to the break room, turns on the microwave for 2 minutes, we probably won't do anything about it. So it's really scope of impact. And if it's happening frequently, then yeah, we need to.
But how do you react quickly? You had this little slices versus the white slice.
Yeah. So
There's still little slices going on.
Sure. In the Mist world, we have this global RRM that it's a reset button, right? Every day the cloud says this is what I think it should be, and then the APs can still make their own decisions when they need to, based on local issues. Alrighty, and that is it. Thank you.